A very good evening to you. Welcome to the West Ham Voice on a Wednesday evening. I don't normally do a show at this time of day, at this time of night on this day. But I got a bit of news, a bit of breaking news. Well, breaking if you haven't heard it, not breaking if you have heard it, and then this will just be confirmation more than breaking. And it is about the squad that's flown out to Serbia for the game against TSC Backa Topoloa, which is going to be held, of course, on Thursday evening. Now, we already know that there are two players that are already out of the squad. Michail Antonio hasn't gone out with the squad because of his knee injury. We believe he still won't be available until around about Christmas time, mid-December-ish time, that sort of time. We've got confirmation that Jared Bowen has also not gone out with the squad because he has had the minor surgery, the minor procedure, the arthroscopy on his knee to drain fluid out of his knee. But we've been told quite clearly that he should be more than available for the game against Crystal Palace on Sunday. He'll get a test, he'll get a late fitness test, but we believe that he will be available. And there is a third player, senior player, that hasn't flown out with the senior squad, and that is Mohammed Kudus. Now, Kudus, I was really surprised at. I said, oh, wow, is it because of his back injury? Has that reoccurred again? Has that flared up? And I've been told, no, it's got nothing to do with an injury. He's just got a virus. He's not very well. He's got a bit of a cold, and he's been left behind in order to recover. But again, he should also be available for the game against Crystal Palace this coming weekend. So fingers crossed for that. Now, that obviously gives an opportunity for a number of players in the squad to demonstrate what they're capable of doing. We saw that Mubama got his opportunity at the weekend against Burnley. He came on for half an hour and he made a difference. But with three players, senior players out injured, there is an opportunity now also for other players who've been on kind of like on the periphery of the team, like Said Benrahma this season, Pablo Fornals and Maxwell Cornet, as well as Mubama as well. So these players have got an opportunity now. They've got a good chance to really sort of demonstrate and stake their claim in the squad and say, look, don't forget us. We are just as important as the players that are starting regularly. Now, I heard a story about Pablo Fornals, or involved Pablo Fornals, and there was a bit of confusion as to exactly what's happened. Now, it involved Fornals, Paqueta, and also David Moyes. Now, we were led to believe that there was an altercation. They all went out for dinner to an Argentinian restaurant in the West End on Monday called Sucre. Very nice, by the way. Very expensive. But anyway, that's another story. They were all out for dinner. And apparently the story went that Paqueta had words with David Moyes about the treatment of Pablo Fornals. But that's not the case. The case was, if you remember at the end of the game, David Moyes made a last-minute substitution where he brought Paqueta off and he put Pablo Fornals on. Now, you saw Paqueta and Moyes kind of having words. Now, at the time, I thought, oh, well, Matt, that's maybe because Paqueta was a little bit upset from being subbed. And why should he be upset? You know, last minute and all that sort of stuff. What difference would it have made? But apparently, the altercation, if you want to call it that, was because Paqueta felt sorry for Pablo Fornals, for the player coming on only for the last 30-odd seconds of the game. And he thought it was a bit unfair on Fornals. You know, a bit the treatment of him wasn't very, very good. Now, of course, every manager makes last-minute changes, especially when you're winning. Every manager makes last-minute changes to see the clock down, you know, to sort of waste a bit of time. But I kind of get Paqueta. I mean, it's great. I mean, Paqueta and Fornals and also Emerson, you know, those Latin players, they've got a bit of a camaraderie within the squad. So they're kind of looking out for each other. And I think that's nice of Paqueta to, you know, to sort of want to speak out on behalf of Fornals. But at the same time, you know, you can understand why Moyes did it. He could have maybe not even brought Fornals on. He could have brought another player on. But it was about winding the clock down. Now, that aside, I think Fornals has now got an opportunity, just like I said, like Benrahma, like Cornet, like Mubama, to say, listen, David Moyes, we are part of this squad and we're going to demonstrate to you that why we should be starting or getting more game time. Even if it don't start, at least getting more game time from the subs bench. And I think most of these players, the four that I mentioned, are likely to start or get quite a bit of game time against TSC. Now, moving on to TSC, excuse me, moving on to TSC, since we played them in the 3-1 win back in September, they've played 11 games, they've lost 4, they've drawn 5, and they've only won 2. Now, interestingly, their last win was in the Serbian league away to Partizan Belgrade, where they beat them 4-0 away from home. Good result. But in Europe, they haven't fared so well. As you can see, they're bottom of the table. They haven't won any games. They've lost 3, and they've only drawn 1. And the only point that they got was against Olympiacos at home a few weeks back. Now, Olympiacos thought that they were going to win the game. They were well on their way to winning. They were 2-1 up with only a few seconds to go. And TSC managed to get a last-minute equaliser. Now, in fairness to Olympiacos, they were playing with only 10 players. They got a player sent off in the 71st minute. So for the last 19, 20 minutes of the game, they were playing with one man down. And in their games, TSC in Europe, they've scored 4 goals, but they've conceded 13, of which 5 were against Freiburg in their last match of the tournament. They got thumped 5-0. So for me, I think we've got to be favourites to win this game. Now, despite the scare, if you go back to September, on the 21st of September when we played them at home, we didn't do that well in the first half. It was a bit of an okay game, nothing to write home about. And then, of course, at the beginning of the second half, when Ogbonna made the mistake in defence, he fumbled the ball and Stanic got the ball off him and went on to score a goal. And we started to think, hang on a minute, this isn't the way Europe is meant to be going. Now, in fairness, we composed ourselves. We got back into the game. As you could see, Kudus scored 2 goals on the 66th and 70th minute, and Thomas Soucek wrapped up the game on the 82nd minute. But it was a bit of a scare, and because TSC Backa Topoloa were a bit of an unknown, we didn't know whether we were going to actually get back into the game or not. But we got back in it. We beat them quite convincingly, despite a poor first half. And we've gone on to do pretty well. We're top of the league in Europe. And, and I was actually surprised. Even I didn't realize that it was against head-to-head, what puts you first and second, because we beat Freiburg, but Freiburg, as you can see, have got a better goal difference than us. They've got a 7 goal difference to our 3, but it was the head-to-head that keeps us on top of that league. So I don't want to say any game is easy, but this should be a bit of a no-brainer for us. Whatever the team we're going to put out, and I'm going to go on to who I think might be starting in the game. I think we've got enough in our locker, enough in our squad, even without Antonio, without Bowen, and without Kudus. We should have enough in our squad to get a win in this game, even though it's away from home. It ain't going to be easy. They're going to make it very difficult for us, and we're going to probably have to break them down in order to get the goals that we need. But it's a must-win, because we win, we stay top of that European league. So it's not a game that I think we're going to take lightly, but it's a game that I think we should, with the players that we've got, we should actually beat Backa Topoloa. Now, just to confirm, Antonio, as I've already mentioned several times in several shows, is likely to be out till around about Christmas time, mid December time. Kind of expecting him to be back for the game against Liverpool in the League Cup away from home. If not that, then it'll be probably against Man United just before Christmas. At worst case scenario, if his injury is not as bad as we're being told, if he's not going to make either of those games, he might be back just after Christmas against Arsenal away. As I've already mentioned, Bowen has had his minor knee procedure. He's had an arthroscopy on his knee, which has drained the fluid out. And he hasn't flown with the squad to Serbia. And it should be that he'd be back for the game against Crystal Palace. He'll get a late fitness check just to make sure. But they're pretty. The club are pretty confident that he'll be back for that game. And as I've just confirmed, if you're just hearing it for the first time, it's breaking news. If you've already heard it, it's confirmation news that Mohammed Kudus is out with a virus. Nothing about an injury or anything. It's just a virus that he's got. And again, as I've been told, he should be back in time for the game against Crystal Palace as well. So with that in mind, who do we think is going to start? Now, I think this is the team that David Moyes is likely to start with. There's one contentious place, and that, of course, is up front, because I said even the other day that I didn't think that he would start with Mubama, but who knows? Mubama has now been told to put the contract negotiations to one side. Don't worry about the money, etc. Let's show us what you can do. Use your game time in order to demonstrate that you're good enough to get this better contract that your agents want for you. And so I've got a feeling that quite possibly David Moyes might go, all right, young lad, this is an ideal game for you to get out there, show us what you're capable of, and demonstrate to us that you're good enough to. Moyes has already said about him, he's got a good mentality, a right attitude of a senior player, etc. So let's see what happens. Maybe Moyes, after the game against Burnley at the weekend, started to big him up because he's like, "Get ready, son. You're gonna start." So let's go from the back. Fabianski, we know, always the cup goalie, so he'll be in goal. Kehrer is another one. Apparently, there's stories out there that we're going to sell him in January. I don't believe that for a minute. I think Kehrer at this moment in time, maybe until the summer, is an integral part of this squad, and I can't see us selling him at the moment. Ben Johnson, who might be on the bench, is the likelier to be sold because he's only going to have about 6 months left on his contract. Whereas I don't think we're going to sell Kehrer in January. I think he's a backup to Soufal. And I think he will be kept. Soufal, I don't think will be picked for this game. I think he will be kept fresh for the game against Crystal Palace at the weekend because I'll tell you what, he's going to need it. They've got they've got fast players at Crystal Palace, haven't they? And we saw Soufal having a bit of a hard time against Burnley last weekend against Koleosho, who played out on that side for Burnley. And I think he's going to be kept fresh for the game this weekend. So I think Kehrer will start. And then another player, I think in central defence, I think Mavropanos will get called up as well. I actually personally think Mavropanos should be playing more Premier League games. But, it's another opportunity for him to go, look, I'm knocking on the door and I'm demonstrating to you how capable I am, not only in Europe, but also in the Premier League as well. Now, I've said before, I think quite possibly that Mavropanos could be a better pairing for Naifa Gerd at the back. All right, they in the few games that they played together in Europe, they haven't really demonstrated a solidity, but I think in time, I think that could be the future centre pairing at the back. And it's another opportunity for Mavropanos and a Gerd to demonstrate that they do have a good understanding of each other's game. So I'm going with a Gerd. I think this is where Moyes is going to go, look, I know I've got options on the bench. I know I've got other players that are chomping at the bit to play, but I think he'll go, I've got to keep it solid. So I think he'll go with a Gerd as well as Emerson at left back. And then in the middle, again, that security, I think he'll play Alvarez in the middle of the park. And then it comes to attacking midfield. And this is where I think he could possibly make a few changes. I think Pablo Fornals will start the game. And I think Said Benrahma will also start the game. They'll be out on the flanks with Souček and Paqueta in the middle attacking midfield. And then that's when it comes to Mubama. I've got a feeling he might start him. But there are other alternatives, aren't there? You go back to the back and he might turn around and say, well, you need to redeem yourself, Ogbonna. So, you made the mistake in the first game against this team. So let's see what you're capable of doing. So he may decide to play Ogbonna at the back. And they may also decide to play Aaron Creswell, because the reason why I'm thinking that he may do that, I don't think he will, but he may do, is because some of these players do need game time, because we're going to need them. I talked about having 10 games over the next 30 odd days throughout the tail end of December and tail end of November and throughout December. And these players are going to need a bit of game time. And so it's a possibility that you might see Ogbonna and Creswell starting. My gut feeling is that they'll probably come on, dependent on how the game is going. But there's a chance that Moyes could decide to start either or both of those two. I've kept the midfield the same. Fornals, Benrahma, etc. And then the other alternative up front is Maxwell Cornet, who I mentioned earlier on. You know, he's also got a point to prove. He hasn't started that many games. You could see, well, I don't think he started any, has he? You could potentially play him out on the left instead of Fornals, but I think you'll go with either Mubama or Cornet. I don't think he's going to go for the Danny Ings experiment again. I think even he has realised that Danny Ings just doesn't work up front. But the irony is that Danny Ings, if there's any game that you would argue that Danny Ings might get a goal or two, should be against TSC. But I think, for me, I think quite likely start with a slight question mark over the front man is I think he's going to go with this team. Fabianski, Kera, Mavropanos, Agurd, Emerson, Alvarez, Fornals, Souček, Paqueta, Benrahma, and the question mark, Mubama. Look, it's an opportunity. It's a great game to actually have, despite it being played away. Yes, we need the right result. We need to win in order to stay at the top of that group. Because the last thing we want is to drop points. Go away with a draw, having to then beat Freiburg in the last game of this of the group stages, and then find ourselves in the playoffs against a team coming down from the Champions League. We don't want that. We don't want the extra game as well. I think we will go out and get a win. I think it will be an opportunity for much of these squad players to demonstrate what they're really capable of doing. And I think we'll see that as well. So my prediction, look, we need to keep a clean sheet. Why not start? I mean, we've only kept, one or two throughout the whole season? So I'm going to go with a clean sheet. I'm going to go with a 3-0 win. And I think Mubama will get his goal. Whether he starts in the game or whether he comes on from the bench, I think he'll get a goal rather than one that's going to be given as an own goal. Thank you all for watching. Much appreciated. If you're new to the channel, please do hit the like button, the subscribe button, and the bell notification, which lets you know when I'm next back on. And I'll see you all very, very soon.